Helena.
Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Sawyer.
Hi. If you have not visited the Divorce Magazine YouTube channel, please do. We've got lots of videos there with people who are experts in the field of divorce and some people giving their own experiences of their divorce processes. And also on the divorcemagazine.co.uk, lots of articles written by people who are professionals only. We don't have any bloggers. We don't have any people, just artistic people. We have people who are well trained in the world of divorce or who have experienced divorce from their own perspective, and then they share articles with us. So visit the website and our channel, and then let's see what you'll find there. If there's something that's missing, let us know, and we will try and find somebody who can give us that information for you. Okay, so today we have Helena Goto, and like we were saying just before we started recording, I'm going to do this introduction in a different way. I think it will be great to have a conversation with Helena about her book that is called The Modern Family, and she will tell us why. Modern Family, don't think about the TV. You can think about the TV program actually, because that is another modern family, and this is your modern family, and we'll see why that is. So hi, Helena, and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with just tell us a little bit about you and how you came to write this book. Why this book?
Well, it was a little bit out of the blue. I have my background, my business is in conflict resolution, and I have worked in companies, and I still continue to work in companies, helping people, employees, teams navigate their way through conflict, develop their communication skills. And when I basically came to the final epiphany of my marriage is over, I 2 years ago, I applied those conflict resolution skills to my situation because there was a lot of conflict. At the time, my husband at the time was very high conflict, really struggled to communicate. And however, we have three children, three beautiful boys who are very active, play a lot of sports, and we weren't financially in a situation to live in two completely different households. We tried things, we tried nesting, one of us having an apartment, and however, it became logistically and financially easier to stay in the same house. And so it's been a real process going through a lot of different pieces, separating the marriage from the parents, the family, because like a job, you can leave it, it's a contract, it ends, go and get another one. Same with a marriage, but not as a parent. You never get to quit. If you quit, you're still a parent. You're just a parent that quit.
Yes.
And so so uh I realized I had so many people commenting because I was very open and honest about it. I was open with the children, and we were thriving as a family. And people were really started to say, "What's going on?" And I did that, and we did this, and for years we lived in different rooms. And oh my goodness, my husband and I are doing this right now. Like he lives in the back room. So many people that I knew day to day that I had no idea were living like this were coming out of the closet, so to speak. And so I realized it was something that isn't uncommon. It's not a new concept. It's just not something that people feel that they can openly talk about. There's a lot on how to save the marriage. There's a lot on how to get divorced. Uh, However, there's not a lot on how to successfully separate, divorce, separate, but rebuild your foundation as parents, as a family. So the book is A Modern Family, keeping the family intact when the marriage is over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it happened, and it is new. I mean, I just released it in February, so I'm
Yeah,
really just coming out publicly. That
it's
too.
true. And you said something right at the beginning when you started speaking, which was with your conflict resolution. I know you did a couple of masters. I think one was one in conflict resolution.
Yes, I have a master's in dispute resolution and a master's in business.
Yeah, and just dispute resolution is such a big topic.
Mm-hmm.
You bring it down to divorce. It feels to me like I would just like another interview with you to pick your brains to find out how can we apply the dispute or conflict resolutions strategies in a situation like
Oh,
divorce, you know.
and 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 how I would respond to that just briefly is really early on, because
Right.
I believed when I did my master's in dispute resolution, I believed because I come from a very like messy divorced family, my parents, obviously. And I felt, and I still feel very passionate about saving the children from the conflict and the ongoing suffering for the years that comes from the conflict that the parents go through. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'll be a divorce mediator and I'll save the family. Well, by the time you're in court mandated divorce mediation, you are so deep in
Don't
your
want to
conflict.
hear anything. You don't want it's like a war. You are.
So so much damage has been done that it was, and I would sit there watching these two adults just at their in their worst moment with completely having lost track of the prize, like what the goal was, spending all of their money that is still the joint money. This is the pot that is now being given to the lawyers and not to the children. And it was so frustrating. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not neutral. I'm the opposite of a mediator. I've got a really strong opinion. So that's why I pivoted at that point and went into more workplace dispute resolution mediation.
Yeah. So with your book, really interesting because it's your story, but it feels like your story with a message that's not being pushed down our throats. It's just you talking about what you experienced and how it worked for you. What really got me about that is that part where you and your husband, your ex-husband, lived under the same or continue to live under the same roof with your children, not for 1 month or 2 months. It's been how long now? A few years?
It's been 2 years in June, so in a few months.
Oh,
And it wasn't. It was a very the first 6 months was me trying to work out how to get out of there, like how to do this like everybody else does it, trying to get up enough money to buy get into another house. And it really was finding this home that was just perfect in the way that it was structured, that I actually a friend of mine said, well, you guys are about to go on a family holiday. You don't think you could just live together and but separately? And I'm like, and my mind started racing. I'm like, yes, in this house we could. It was just the space. It was bigger. We're separate. He's got his separate. I mean, as much as we're still living in the same home, I still have my space. He has his space, but we're still, the family.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yes, we've been doing that, and it's working. But it's a day-to-day process. It's not something like, well, this is going to be it. It's this right now is the best case scenario for both of us, financially, with the children, and with logistically,
yeah,
and we will keep doing this until it isn't,
yeah. And
right?
yeah, and
And
like
I want to just add, and that comes with certain boundaries,
I want to
certain
talk about
boundaries.
boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, okay, 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 okay.
It's on my list about the boundaries. But yeah, it's like you're saying, it's something that you've written about, and when people hear about it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, how are you doing it?" But actually, there are people. Even I remember a couple when I was growing up where they were in the same room. A friend, one of my best friends, their parents were in the same room but had separate beds. And I remember asking her, "Why are your parents sleeping in separate beds?" But it was kind of like because that's what worked for them at that point. And like I said to you, which I usually don't do when I'm interviewing somebody else, I do the same thing, living under the same roof with my ex-husband, and we've been doing that since 2019. And just for not for financial reasons for our daughter who's absolutely fine, but she's reaching a point where it's like, okay, dad, you need to buy your own place now. It's kind of like she wants that almost like a clean separation, but amicably, and she's ready for it. And people do look at us and say, how can you guys live together? It's like it just works for the moment. It's not all smooth sailing, but it's just what works at the moment. Not many people do it, I have to say.
Well, I think my thoughts on that is that you're both in the same place now. Like you're both want the same.
Yeah,
And that is what the dispute resolution, where you always start when two people are in conflict. You have them agree on, what is your common ground?
see.
And so right now, your common ground, I mean, that you can tell me, your common ground is that you want what's best for him,
Exactly.
and he wants to be able to live self-sufficiently, and you're supportive of somebody who's the father of your children,
That,
because what's best for him is
yeah,
best for your daughter, and what's best for
abs-
your daughter is best for you.
yeah. You do what you have to do for your child.
Yes.
Yeah,
And for some people, they feel that sucking it up, pretending, living dishonestly is what's best for their children. And the that is so admirable. And I do believe that many of us do that for, you know, an extended period of time until we just can't anymore. And the pain and what goes between being in that place and making that decision, I'm just going to suck it up and do what's best for the kids, to I can't do this anymore. There's a lot of damage that's done in that place. So to the sooner when you to get to that point of this, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. This is not what's best for me, and I'm going to be honest about that. The sooner you get there, I think the sooner you have a chance to even repair the relationship. It doesn't have to be, but just being honest. This is where I'm at. This isn't working. I don't feel seen. I don't feel loved. These are my needs. They're not being met. And if I don't meet them here, I'm probably going to go somewhere else and meet them. And if I'm not, my needs aren't getting met, your needs probably aren't getting met. And starting to have those honest conversations is really what is my soapbox.
yeah, no, absolutely. There's something that I just want to read when we look at the different chapters that you have in your book, and when you're talking about what is best for the children, which is what we're talking about now. There was something that I highlighted. I just wanted to read to you, which I found that chapter was quite poignant. And yeah, it was a little bit hard to read, I have to say, where you say that once the only reason to stay together becomes the children, there needs to be a constant assessment of whether the situation is really what's best for the children. I had to highlight that because it said a lot in just that one sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
Constant assessment. Is this what's really good for the children?
Or am I just scared?
Yeah, yeah,
Am
absolutely.
I just too fearful? Am I hiding
Yeah.
in this under the guise of, oh, I'm doing what's best for the children?
And you mentioned nesting and you
Mm.
tried nesting. How did that work and why did that not work? Or did it not work?
So when we rented a small little, very small little apartment for June initially, because my approach in the beginning was you need space to work through what you're working through. I think it's best for the family that you have your space to go through what you're going through because it's a lot. And he eventually went along with that and moved in to the apartment with like two bags of clothes, like just so sorry for himself. Uh, However, he would come back to the house at 6 a.m. in the morning. He wouldn't leave till 11 o'clock at night. So I'm like, what is going This isn't working. And so I said, okay, how about I try? I'll go and stay 3 nights at the apartment so I get some space. And then you do 3 nights. Well, we tried that for a minute. However, the children really wanted me first thing in the morning, and they're still young, right? And
Yeah,
they want mum. It's just I am the nurturing body in the house.
yeah,
We play our roles, and the boys wanted me first thing in the morning, and they wanted me last thing at night. So I ended up doing what June was doing, being there first thing in the morning, and then leaving late at night. Okay, this is just ridiculous. I eventually ended up not going, and then we had this empty apartment, so we gave that up. So there we are, back with a failed attempt. Okay, here we are back at zero. But from that, I realized that I needed to have a home that the children wanted to come to, that they felt, because we were in a house we'd been in for 10 years. That's all they'd known.
mm,
So I needed to be able to create. And at that point, Juna dug his heels in and I'm not leaving. You can leave me, but I'm not leaving you. I'm not going along with this. And so I realized I needed to find a place. And that's how finding that home came
Yeah.
along. And I was dragging my feet because how can I possibly pay this amount of money? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like by the time you went to see the house that you ended up living in, that
Hmm.
was not the plan. You were not thinking,
No,
I'm
we'll
going to
live
get
together.
a yeah, it was not the plan. So, which brings us nicely to your next chapter, which is Together Apart. Tell us a little bit, just a little. I know we've kind of like touched on it here and there, but the Together Apart part chapter, how would you describe that Together Apart? Because when I read it in the beginning, when I was going through your book, I thought it was co-parenting. So we are together but apart.
Hmm.
But in your book, it's literally together in the same house, but apart within, under the same roof.
Yes, it's very much the marriage is over and we're working to keep the family intact. And so trying to rebuild the foundation of what do we really need to communicate together? What is important? And also having the grace to go through it together. And I think that that's a key piece of there's always one, typically always one person who's way down the road of grieving the relationship than the other person. So to be there and allowing my husband to go through his grief process and his healing process. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to know that you're a big part of the pain.
Because
And
is not away. You can see it.
you're witnessing it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of gratitude now where we are that we did that together
Right.
because I don't know how he would have got through that going through it. I don't know. I don't think he'd be where he is. He's healthy and in a great place and his business is thriving. He's in such a great place because he sort of took ownership and he had the support of the family. I don't know if he would have the state that he was in at the when the marriage was over would have been able to do that living by himself in a little apartment.
So when he was going through, the grief of, everything falling apart, did you feel that you had to look after him, or did you look after him? Did you walk the journey with him, or was he separate?
This is where my dispute resolution skills really came in when I had to be very um, patient and not take it personally because a lot of things were said that were hurtful, that
That's
was a
hard.
man in pain. It's tough. However, he was doing the work. He was doing the work. He had the therapy. He was building friendship, and he was doing what he needed to do. And so, if he wasn't doing that, and he was leaning on me, it would and needed me to be the one to save him, it would not have worked. I think rather than being the one to help him go through it, that was not. I was more not getting on him and attacking him and telling him he's wrong, like getting latched into the dramas that for him that he was going through, that he was trying to create to get me back to. He was trying all these different things, and I think just keeping myself constantly coming back to, I'm here for our family. This man is the father of my children. I'm here to, and this is the best place for him. And at the same time, the boundary is the kids need to feel safe in this house. And so there are certain things that may happen once but can't happen again. And and so that was part of staying in there with him and allowing him to go through it. Because there were a number of times where I felt you crossed a line. This is a absolute deal breaker. And that's when we would have the conversation. This is your best case scenario. This environment, it might not be what you want. You want me to be in love with you. You want us to live as husband and wife. That's not going to happen. So, this right now is the best case scenario. And this is how we need to operate for the children. So, it was trying to stay in that space
But
and
what
really
about,
having,
what about you? What
well,
support did you have? How did you get? Because I'm listening to you speaking, I can see it. I can see it, but then I'm thinking, but then who was holding you? Who was supporting you? And
And I think this is what I also speak about in the book. Build your community. You need your community, and part of not feeling empowered to go through this is because you don't have that support. I have a friend that's like a sister to me, who, I mean, every step of the way, and is someone that June feels safe with. So he there and she's just wildly emotionally intelligent, and so didn't create a triangle. There
wow.
was somebody else in our world who actually is a family therapist, who he felt safe with. So there was ways for me to kind of have other people step in,
Okay.
uh, and then I also had, I had my own friends. I had my charitable. I belong to a Rotary, and I go and do things like that, which gets you out of your own. You're like, okay, the
Your own
world is
head,
bigger than me.
yeah.
And the kids, I'm just so focused on. I mean, it's a lot. We're busy, and I have a job as well. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, so I like the idea of the community because you can't really go through it alone. And because, especially in that situation where somebody else is doing the grieving, and you know how important he is to the little people in your house,
Mm.
so, and then just holding him. And yeah, so I really, when I'm working with parents, that's one thing that I ask: what support system do you have behind you? Who's holding you? Who's catching you when you're falling? And then hopefully sometimes they don't have anybody, then we try and find at least one
Hmm.
person that you can trust. Not somebody will fan the
Yes.
flames of your anger and tell you how
Yes.
horrible everything is, but somebody who can at least be there. Let's talk about the boundaries, because here you are living under the same roof. Did you do his laundry? Did he do his own laundry? Who cleared the dishes? Did you eat together? How did this work, or how does it work?
And well, I think that this is a piece that's very personal to each couple,
Okay.
and part of the early stages of, as the person who has decided the marriage is over. What do you need? What are your needs? What's your truth, right? If you're okay to do all of the laundry, do all of the laundry. If that's something that feels unfair, and that you need that to be, you do your laundry and I'll do my laundry, and you'll do the kids' laundry one week and I'll do the kids'. If that's what you need, that's what you need. So, I mean, I can speak to specifics of how we do it. However, I do think it's more about really being honest about, are your needs getting met in the situation? What doesn't feel okay? So a big boundary for me is my room is my room. You can't just come into my room. I'm kind of upstairs, so it's he seldom ever comes upstairs, and in fact will text me when we talk, right? Unless it's something really important, and maybe I'm on a call and he can't, and he'll knock on the door and he'll be like, so there's a very much a clear boundary around my personal space.
Yeah.
I think finances are probably a really big one for a lot of people, obviously, and that's something that is a really important conversation to have early on, and allow it to evolve as well,
Yeah.
to start separating that, if that's the way. Or that is just such an important conversation, because it can be used as such a weapon
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
one person is making more money than the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we've had this conversation where June will be like, I'm just gonna blow up my businesses and you'll get nothing. Okay, but that's just not really how it works,
Yeah.
right? Like, this
Yeah.
is the best case scenario right here. Because you do that, then it's not good for you. It's not good for the kids. So
Yeah.
then we go to court, and we're in California. It's 50-50. It does not matter. Like, it does not matter. You will give me 50%, and we will both get 50% from this situation. And that's not as good as what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So I think coming back to the logic is a really, and having that logic been able to have had those conversations about why you're doing what you're doing and the consequences of not doing what you're doing, making that clear. So when somebody does challenge the boundary that you've set, it's not, you don't need that other person to agree with your boundary. You've set your boundary.
You have to,
So,
yeah, just like you would with other people, but this
yeah,
is, yeah, yeah. And I just need to make it clear for the people watching this that when you read the book, you will come to understand that what Helena had to live through, it wasn't just conversations being had and, and signing little papers and saying this and that. It was quite a difficult transition, when you were going through that and the grieving process that you're talking about. It was quite, I was reading it and I was thinking, what the hell?
really, I
You
know.
it was quite volatile. So I don't want people to think, oh, she must they must have a good understanding and they were able to sit down and talk about this. Actually not. I can say that about me and my relationship and living in the same house, but yours actually was not that. So anybody who's thinking, well, I think it's different, no, you need to read the book and just see
And
yourself.
and also to that point, the other side of that is that if you're in an abusive relationship, this is not something that you can do. This is something that you need help and support and your network. And it is a whole, this book is not what I would recommend for somebody who's truly in an abusive relationship. And abuse is a process of power and control. And that's not what I was in. I, so even though June can be very loud and come across what some people might interpret as abusive, I never, the pattern of abuse wasn't there.
Mm.
I have my network, I have my confidence and self esteem, I had my own resources.
There was no financial abuse. There was, yeah.
No, it was really knowing that I'm dealing with a beautiful man who does not have the ability to communicate through his emotions. I know, he comes from rural Japan, was brought up by his grandfather, so does not have any of the language to actually talk through this. So that was the therapy that, he decided finally to go and get. And definitely not saying I'm perfect in any of this at all. I have said the wrong things and done the wrong things, and in so many ways, I just bring it back to the piece about navigating your way through conflict. And the reason I want to put this out there and give people more sort of like tools,
Mm.
ideas of how to navigate your way through it, is that there really are ways to do it. That when you look at being parents as the business of bringing up healthy, well-adjusted children, that's the business you're in as parents. And yes, the marriage is over, but this business of parenting will never stop. So how do you apply the skill set of navigating through those difficult conversations with people who have different perspectives and understandings and ways of communicating?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, honestly, the whole, as you're speaking, I'm just thinking this conflict resolution bit and divorce, there's just something there to be done and to be talked, to be spoken about. Um, so I'll come to my final question, which I know people will ask because they ask me already. Dating when you're living under the same roof, how, because it's one thing that you're living there and the kids are okay and everything is, going on as best as it can, but then at some point you want to move on, you want to start another relationship. How are you managing that? Or yeah, how is it going?
It's going amazing.
Really?
Uh, I am, after not feeling seen and having intimacy for
Oh,
so many years, like it really is such a big part of being alive, and a sacrifice that I didn't realize I had made, and decided that that was just it. I wasn't going to ever feel those things again. And so it's and so, but to speak more, like rather than speak more about the actual process of it, I have been very honest about wanting to, like about a year in, I started having conversations with the kids. At some point, mommy's probably going to start to date. I was already, going out every now and again and having dinner here and there, but it wasn't something that I needed to create a dynamic in the family.
Yeah.
But I warmed the children up because I wanted them to understand. Oh, but what about daddy? You've got daddy. Well, daddy and I aren't like that. That's not the relationship that we're in anymore. Well, why would we need another? We don't need another father.
That's not what you
You're
get.
not going to get another father. You've got your one father. So they got to have those conversations without it being about a certain person, just the concept. And then the second phase was when I met someone, was ready to be, I want to date somebody. I'm going to start going out on dates. And that was a really big transition
Mm.
because then it got very real for June. And that was one of those blow ups that resulted in a crossed a boundary. Um, this can't happen again, or this situation is not tenable. We can't live together. Um, but then how I navigated it was that I would tell the children things like, your dad and I getting a divorce, and nothing would change. Like the family's still intact, mum's still available. I'm someone who's always gone out with my girlfriends, and I've always had my own thing. So nothing really changed. So it's not that big of a deal. And I had a really interesting situation that I really want to share here because just recently I said to June, you know, this is something that is really hard for you. This is a big to get yourself to the point where you're okay with me dating someone. You don't need to know them, see them. We have our rules around that. But just, I can't be going out and coming home and you being in a fit. It's just, that's not sustainable. So if we can't get through this, because at some point I am going to be dating somebody, out in the open and the kids will know him and it's going to be a thing. I'm not going to move in with him or move him in or have him sleep over, but there'll be a guy. So and he's like, well, I'm not dating anybody because I'm just working with the children. And that was his thing. So it was like I was not doing what was right for the family. I wasn't as committed as he was to the family. And so having that conversation that it's something that's important to me, I'm not going to. So I said, let's get a therapist. Let's go to therapy and talk about our situation and see if we can get through this. So I got this therapist. Oh my Lord. I got a man because I thought, well, this will be easier, so he doesn't feel ganged up on by the women. Um, just my bias there. That just I thought that might work for him. So we meet with this therapist, and it's virtual. I'm upstairs in my room. He's downstairs in his room, and this guy, he says. So I start to tell him the situation, and he's like, "Hang on, June, what's going on with you? Like, what do you want to be here?" And June's like, "Well, that's a good question." He's like, well, this is couples therapy. I mean, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. Is this Helena's idea? Yeah, this is Helena's idea. Well, we can just go with Helena and you can jump off. He's like, no, let Helena finish. And so I said, this is the situation we're in. And he said to June, so what's your expectation? And he said, well, that she just doesn't date anyone until the kids leave for college. I'm like, that's 10 years. Are you kidding me? I mean,
But
that's
that's
not.
weird.
Anyway, so the therapist says, well, what about 1 year, Helena? Could you commit to prioritizing the children for 1 year and not dating anybody? And I was like,
Because you've been
I,
doing none of that.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that I can't prioritize my children and date? I was like, what? But that
Wow.
was the therapist could not wrap his head around the situation that we had come to discuss with him. It was so outside. And so he was trying to fit us into, okay, so if we can stop. Oh, and he called it an extramarital affair. So
Ooh.
so you've been having an extramarital affair. And I said, we're separated. So, and he said, have you had sex? And I have you had sex outside the marriage? I was just like the worst therapy ever. And it set June and I. Went into a tailspin for like 2 weeks. He was just thinking about me having sex and extramarital affairs and all of this stuff. And I just was,
It's
isn't
the
it
husbands
terrible?
better.
So anyway, I think uh, that didn't work for us. So we haven't gone back to that therapist, obviously. Uh,
I wonder why.
but it, it is definitely the next phase for us. There is somebody that is important to me that I do want to spend more time with.
Yeah.
And if it's going to create conflict in the house, then things will have to change. So again, this will be the next chapter, right? How do we have this conversation? And we're trying to have this conversation. And the conversation, it's a process. You know, there was the first little one. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, I think I mean one lesson is if you don't like your therapist, please change. Don't feel like you have to stick
Yeah.
with them.
Oh,
Honestly, no.
yes.
You know, therapists and psychologists, we know some stuff, we don't know everything, and sometimes, you know, that was a bit messy. But you have last question. You have rules. Like you said, I'm not going to bring him here, he's not going to stay overnight. And this is because the children are there, right? Is that
And those rules are now rules. Those
mm,
right.
I
I'm
like
not got
now rules, yeah.
now rules. They
Set in
can,
stone.
and also this is why this is why this book is, this is how you do it. Everybody has a different situation. My children are at an age where that's not a conversation I'm going to have with them. They don't need to know details of my relationship with somebody. Like
I
those aren't
totally agree.
children conversations. I don't. So, but in 5 years, even in a year or 2 years, or you've just it's a process, but it's a part of the process is the whole root of the process is just being honest with yourself, being brave enough to be honest with yourself and
Yeah.
choose to live this life like you're not going to live forever. It's okay to want to meet your own needs. It's okay to want intimacy. It's okay to want someone to kiss you and feel amazing. And it's okay to go on a trip with your children without their father and have a great time. And you know, which is what I'm doing right now. So it
Very excited for you. I mean, Helena, um,
Helena.
I I cannot thank you enough for this book. I think bringing it out in the open in terms of living under the same roof in different rooms can actually work. It's not. I think we hold. I don't even know where it comes from. Where it's like you go through a divorce and you split up, and that's it. And you know, if you can remain friends, that's even like wow, that's great. But it's almost like you divorce and that's it, that's done, kids are here, kids are there, and that's the end of the story. Whereas it doesn't have to be like that. And like the fact that you keep saying it depends on everybody's situation. Abusive relationships, I have a couple of clients at the moment that I'm working with where I would never in a million years recommend this to them, because they're already living it in a weird sort of way. It would never ever work in that way. It's kind of like a clear separation and tight boundaries that need to be put in place and structure that would need to be put in place. But for other couples, it is possible. You know, I would love to know what you did with your own irritation, anger, frustration, you know, when he would do things or does things that you're thinking, oh my God, this is exactly why we're not together. Um,
Oh, I'll be honest. I probably drank too much wine. At the end of the day, do you know, like just the kids go to bed, and I'm just like, I just
yeah.
and but then I gave myself permission for that as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it's okay. You know, you're not waking up in the morning having a glass of wine. But I definitely, and you know, I'm from New Zealand, so that's just a cultural way of navigating our emotions. And then I got to the point where I think that it's just again about being truthful about where you're at. And I started running,
Oh, no.
and I've never liked running. I don't even think didn't even think I could run. And that was another thing. I would just go and I would just run, and there was certain music that I'll listen to, and
Yeah.
then there were just ways. I found an acupuncturist that was like, she was like a therapist who would work on your body and come up with all these crazy ideas. So it's just finding those things to keep yourself
Yeah.
healthy, and it's easier to do it early.
Yeah.
To not let it get so dysfunctional and
Like,
ugly,
yeah, like you
because
said
you've
at
just,
the beginning, doing it early.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really the key, is that this is going to end up in divorce. This is, this will end up with us not living together. However, today, this is what's right for my family.
Yeah.
And so it's about that constant, the now rules,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh the the realizing your children are not going to be this age forever. I read a statistic, you'll spend something like, I think it was 70% by the time your kids are 12, that you've spent 70% of the time that you will spend with them for their lifetime.
Wow.
Like, that's it. Like, this is like, from 0 to 12 is just, this is such a vital time to be able to be there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for them to see, and so many people spend that time with their kids, but they're miserable. So it's about, okay, we're still going to be in here, but we're not going to be miserable. We're going to be honest, and we're going to, go through this truthfully and as a team.
Yeah. Can I finish by reading a poem to you about what you
Oh,
said
please.
earlier on? It's this lady called Wendy Cope, and she goes, "The day he moved out was terrible. That evening she went through hell. His absence wasn't a problem, but the corkscrew had gone as well.
But the what?
The corkscrew for the wine.
Oh.
It made me think of, we actually have it on the Divorce magazine. It's one of my favorite poems. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for the interview and for sending me the book and me reading through it. Um, uh, yeah, I quite enjoy. I love this, and I hope people call you to speak a little bit more about, a lot more actually, not a little bit,
Mm.
about this whole idea of living together after the separation, together apart. I think it can save, under the right conditions, the children can just cope with it so much better, so much better. They don't have two sets of school uniform. They don't forget their homework at dad's and forget their trainers at mom's, and so on and so forth. And then the transitioning bit where it's acrimonious and everything. But if it can happen more often, I think it would be a great, great thing to have. But I'm going to get
And
in touch with you for the other interview about the conflict.
conflict resolution. And just to say to what you just said, to wrap that up, I think it would redefine divorce.
Good way of putting it. Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be, the divorce was the beginning of the big fight. To everything, by the time the divorce, everything would have been could have been worked out.
Yeah.
All the fine, everything could already be separated. The foundation's there to live separately. So the divorce literally would just be the finalizing of the end of the contract that you both sit down and you sign.
Thank you.
The lawyers are going to be like, "Oh, not happy with me."
Who is this woman?
Yeah.
Do not read that
Better.
book, telling the clients. Don't read it at all. We'll have no money. I'll see you for one session and we're done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.